Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 73 of the Hey Everybody podcast. We're back from our hiatus, our holiday break. We speak very seriously about things here on the podcast. We call breaks hiatuses. How are you guys? Did you have a good holiday? I hope you had a good holiday, whatever. You know, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, whatever you do. I hope it was good. Mine was lovely. It was so lovely that I find myself in a period of mourning right now because it's over. Both my wife and son had a full week off, and we spent that week just gloriously together. Sat around the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading books, watching movies. We did a holiday movie marathon that did not feature any holiday movies. We watched 10 Keanu Reeves movies. I called it Reevesin' for the season. I'm very proud of that. And it was wonderful. We enjoyed ourselves quite a bit. And I hope you did too. It got my wife and I talking this morning about something I mentioned on the last podcast that she just listened to this morning. If you can believe it, she listens to the podcast. She lives with me and still listens to the podcast. She's a wonderful woman. But she was saying that it was funny for her to hear me talk about how long we'd been together, because it does kind of sneak up on you. You know, she and I are coming up on 16 years of marriage and probably closer to maybe almost 20 years of being in each other's lives and that kind of thing. We have a 12-year-old son coming up on 13. As of last summer, we own a home. Well, I mean, the bank is letting us crash here. That's fun. But it's our home, you know? And all that stuff felt like it happened so gradually that she said it was neat to hear me sort of say it out loud. And that got us to talking about sort of how we got to where we're at and how much we like where we're at and how well we think it's going. And I said to her what I will now say to you, and what I sort of realized for the first time, that like our lives, she and I, and even individually, are this sort of ongoing story of people holding on to what feels good and letting go of what doesn't. And when you get to be our age, which is still, it's a strange sort of middle ground because it's fairly young, but it's old enough to start sort of racking up these things, these double-digit anniversaries and a teenage kid and home ownership and that kind of thing. You get to that age and you sort of stop and look and you go like, this all happened very gradually and very when it was supposed to. And as a result, sometimes even saying it all out loud feels monumental, as it should. You know, I have a record I made that sold. I'll just give you the number because it's not a braggadocious number. It's quite low. But it sold 1,000 copies. We made 1,000 copies of it and it sold out. And that's a huge feeling for me. But it took maybe 2 years, maybe a little more, of, you know, me personally selling these CDs to people, handing them to people, you know, from a merch table or the trunk of my car or, you know, just at shows, putting them in the mail. They all came from me. And because they all came from me, it felt so gradual that one day I went to sort of restock the merch box and there weren't any more. And I went, whoa, we sold 1,000 copies of one record. That's pretty neat. And my wife and I were just sort of talking this morning about how that might be the key to life. Just sort of take your time and follow your gut and trust yourself and just make it about, this feels good, I'm gonna hold on to it. This doesn't, I'm gonna let it go. And it's certainly not the kind of thing that's going to always lead to big, huge, massive moments, but it will lead to what will feel like a big, huge, massive moment where you can look back on a decade or two and go, it's working. It went pretty good. And I like that. I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about today, and I thought I'd talk about that. I was also, we played a show, me and my band played a show on New Year's Eve. And that was very stressful, you know. A lot of stuff got canceled, is getting canceled. There's a strange feeling in the world right now. I was talking to someone and I said, you know that scene in the Western where like the two guys are on opposite ends of the streets and they're eyeballing each other and the tumbleweed blows across and the sun's just so, and it's like, is this happening? It's not happening. And there's always like a kid hidden behind a wagon going like, oh, shit's going down. I feel very much like that kid lately behind the wagon. Sometimes I feel like the wagon itself, just like, what's going on here? What are we doing? And not knowing like even necessarily what you want to see happen or how it will go either way. If this happens or if that happens, what will the result be? I don't know. So leading up to the New Year's Eve show, I felt a lot of stress. There were a lot of long conversations with my wife about feeling like I was in a position where my decision was much more than my decision. I was making a decision on behalf of my band. I was making a decision that would affect a venue and a staff and a crowd, and obviously a decision that could affect my family and that kind of thing in either direction. Either we play the show and there's some risk there, or we don't play the show and there are financial consequences, which are not unsevere. And in the end, after, trust me, hours and hours, probably too much conversation between me and Tori, we went ahead with the show. I talked to the venue about how they were feeling. Everyone on their end was vaccinated and boosted. Everyone in my band is vaccinated. We listened to Biden talk, and we looked at the numbers and what was happening when you would chop the numbers into like vaccinated people and unvaccinated people and age groups and that kind of thing. And I don't want to talk about it because I'm not a doctor or a scientist or even a particularly smart dude. I like to joke that I'm pretty smart because I did all 4.5 years of high school, if that's any indicator. But I ended up making the decision that felt right for us. We played the show. We didn't hang out afterwards because I wanted to get home and ring in the new year with Tori and Ollie. I did not bring them with. We did not set up merch. Just a handful of little compromises I've been making with myself to sort of feel a little bit better about sort of doing what it feels like sometimes I just have to do. I've taken to saying, when we talk about it, your options are limited by your means. And at the end of the day, I still make the vast majority of my money playing music for people. And it felt like something I had to do and wanted to do and that kind of thing. And I say that with no judgment for anyone that didn't feel like it's what they wanted to do. They didn't want to come, that kind of thing. And that's kind of the second thing I want to talk about today. I was talking to my dad this morning and I said, I'm trying to treat other people and think about other people the way I hope they'll think about me. And then that sort of reverses itself where I have to treat myself the way I'm trying to treat other people, which is, if I feel like a person is acting in good faith and in good conscience and is being thoughtful and considering everything there's to consider, I'm trying not to judge the end result, whether I agree with it or disagree with it or whatever. And I think a lot of times we struggle to let that go both ways. It's easy to it's not always easy, but I think it comes more naturally to try to be empathetic or compassionate with other people and go like, well, they're doing their best, and I don't want to judge them, and I don't know exactly what their position is and that kind of thing. It can be a lot trickier to send that inward and say, you know what, I'm doing my best, and I'm trying, and I'm thinking, and I can say honestly, like, I want good things for people, and I'm old enough to know better than to think good faith and good intentions are always going to lead to good results. But I do think those intentions matter. And I know the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but I think sometimes that's one of those things that's drilled into us from the time that we're kids, and you get to be an adult and you realize that's still rattling around back there, but maybe you don't agree with it anymore. I think intentions do matter. Obviously, there are consequences for our actions, and the consequences are not always mitigated by good intentions. But the fact remains, if these recent years have taught us nothing, it's that we don't really always have the luxury of knowing. And sometimes it can feel like every decision we make is just a best guess and a roll of the dice. And I just want everybody to know that I understand where you're coming from if you're making different decisions than me. And I think the world would be a better place if we concerned ourselves just even a little bit more with why so-and-so did such and such, rather than just, so-and-so did such and such. And again, that doesn't diminish consequences, and there's things that you just should not do. But, that's that. I do find myself really, really missing a certain kind of show that I'm not getting to do a ton these days, which is just people sat in a room wanting to hear me do what I do for an hour. I find myself playing a lot more, and this is kind of par for the course for winter, and there's plenty of upside to it, but I'm playing a lot more of these like 2 and 3 hour sets where you can sort of slip into this feeling that you're background music and that kind of thing. You're not really connecting with people always. You can, and I do, but I do miss, it's been a while since I've done a house show. It's been a while since I've done, I've had the good fortune to do a couple like theaters and that kind of thing, and not as many these days. And I miss that quite a bit. And I'm hopeful that they will be back soon. And I miss the traveling too. I've been telling people, if you want me to come play, let's do it. I would drive to another state to play one show, and I would play that show in your kitchen. I really just feel that the absence of that, so all that to say, if you got a place or a house or whatever, I'll drive to wherever. I'll drive down to Texas to play one show. We'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. Let's do some recommendations. First, let's go lightning round. Like I said, we had a week off, and I read a bunch of books. So let me hit you with these. First, The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. I love this man. These are poems, but I love his essays and his interviews and his stories, and his approach to life is one that has deeply impacted me and changed my approach to it and my desire to be connected to the world around me and the ways in which I interact with it, and that kind of trying to have real experiences. This is beautiful. He writes a lot about nature and our place in it and that kind of thing. Highly recommend anything by Wendell Berry, but particularly that book of poetry called The Peace of Wild Things. Next, The Vine That Ate the South by J.D. Wilkes. You may recognize the name J.D. Wilkes. He fronts a band called the legendary Shack Shakers and the Dirt Daubers, and he puts out solo music. He's a session harmonica player for a lot of people. This is a novel he wrote. It's a work of fiction-ish. It's got a little bit of a Stand By Me vibe in that it's two sort of youngish men traveling through the wilderness to try to find something sort of horrifying. And what's lovely about it is throughout the whole thing, he weaves in these Southern folk tales and monster stories and that kind of thing. And it's really great. I really enjoyed it. One of the reviews calls it a Southern Gothic masterpiece of front porch storytelling. Doesn't get much better than that. So, The Vine That Ate the South, fiction by J.D. Wilkes. Fiction-ish. If you don't like poetry, if you don't like fiction, maybe you like a nice memoir. Three Pianos by Andrew McMahon. Again, you may recognize the name. He fronted a band called Something Corporate, and then a band called Jack's Mannequin, and now he does solo stuff. He plays the piano, he plays kind of pop music, but with a brain attached to it. I quite like particularly the Jack's Mannequin stuff. And this is his memoir that deals, I would say, primarily with his father's addiction and Andrew McMahon's cancer survival. At a very young age, in his early 20s, he was diagnosed with leukemia, and he beat it. But it talks a lot about a thing we don't always consider, which is the aftermath of beating cancer, which, again, I found it very interesting to read his take on it and how much it shook him up. And as someone who hadn't been through it, I thought it would just be joy, but it was a lot more than that. And I really enjoyed it. I read it in about a day and a half. And I don't think you need to be a fan of his music at all to enjoy this book. So check it out. And then finally, let's do some music, because this is why we live here. I have a theme to these recommendations today, musically. And the first person to figure out what the theme is and tell me in the comments wins nothing, because I have nothing to give you except my love, and you already have it. This record is called We Live on Cliffs, and it's by Adam Hayworth Stevens. I always thought it was Haworth because of the way it's spelled, but I heard him say it the other day. It's Hayworth. This is cool, just vaguely Americana-tinged indie rock. It's a very listenable record. It's very satisfying, but it's a little bit hard to categorize. I think a lot of times when people say something's difficult to categorize, it means the record itself is kind of difficult and hard to figure out. And this is you could put this on anytime and just give it a listen, and I think you would enjoy it. But it's great, and I think you'll like it. Check it out. Next, we have this wonderfully weird little record called Devotionals. If you're trying to find this record, you can search Devotionals, or you can search the name Tyson Vogel, who is kind of the main brain behind this record. It's almost entirely instrumental, a lot of acoustic guitar, very long songs, and it's just a nice listen. I'm a big fan of instrumental music. I'm a big fan of instrumental acoustic guitar. And I think you'll like it. So check out Devotionals. And if you're paying attention, there's a connection between those two records, and I'd love to hear if you can figure it out. That's it. I hope you guys are good. I hope you enjoyed the break. Thank you to all of you that reached out and wished me and mine a happy holiday, and even supported the podcast through the break, and sent little notes and gifts. And we got a wonderful package from a friend of ours who watches the podcast, and it meant a lot to me. I am very pleased that there's something real in all this podcasty thing. I don't know if you know, but a lot of musicians that have podcasts, and it's not a secret because they talk about it, but a lot of musicians that have a podcast, they were told to have a podcast by a manager or something around an album release because it's a great way to promote. And then you find someone and like they'll come on your podcast and you can go on their podcast, and that's fine. But I like that this is not that. I like that this is not about growth or sales or even updates on my music or any of that. That stuff happens, I'm sure, but I like that this is just about, how are we feeling? What are we thinking about? And trying to share it with people. And even if, if you listen to a thing like today and, I was a bit vague about, we didn't really talk about COVID or anything. We talked about feeling stressed and not always trusting your decisions and that kind of thing. And I think there's some power in just hearing that, like, if you're feeling that way, you're not the only one. And we're living in times that I'm not sure any amount of mindfulness or stoicism or philosophy or spirituality would ever make me so bold as to go like, no, this is definitely the right thing. I'm Christopher Gold. I know. I don't know. I'm just doing my best. And I'm glad you guys are doing your best. And hopefully we can, even in our disagreements, try to interact with each other on that level. I think that's a lot of what This Is Water by David Foster Wallace is about. And that's a big one for me. It's very, very important to me. That I guess it's a speech, but I've always read it. I love it. So I hope you guys are good. Hope you're enjoying the new year. I hope you haven't already canceled your gym membership that you got a week ago. And I hope to see you soon. Like I said, if you want me to come play, let me know and we'll figure it out. I'll drive, I'll play houses, I'll do whatever we got to do. I miss that part of it, that just connecting with people thing. So we'll talk soon. I hope you're good. And see you next time. Bye.